Most of us didn't learn how to be in a relationship. We learned how to survive inside one. We learned to read the room before we spoke, to manage someone else's mood, to make ourselves smaller or louder or more needed, to love in the only way we had ever been shown. And then we brought all of that into the relationships we chose, into our partners, into our children, into our friendships. Not because we wanted to, because we didn't know we were doing it. That is what Season 2 is about. Welcome to the fan in the window interrupting what we inherit. I'm Tressa Bell, registered nurse, former forensic nurse, author, speaker, and someone who has spent years learning the hard way that the patterns we grew up inside don't stay in the past. They travel. They show up in the people we love, in the way we fight, in the way we apologize or don't, in the way we need, the way we pull away, and the way we repeat things we swore we never would. Season 1 of this podcast was about recognizing what you inherited. 12 episodes about the patterns that were passed to you. The nervous system adaptions, the survival strategies, the roles you took on before anyone asked. If you haven't listened to Season 1, you don't need to before this season. You can start right here. But if you want the foundation, every episode is still available wherever you listen. Season 2 goes one step further, because understanding where a pattern came from is only the beginning. The next question is, where is it going? This season, we are going into relationships. The relationship with a partner, the relationship with our children, the friendships that hold us, or the ones that mirror our oldest wounds in ways we are still learning to see. And we're doing it together. Season 2 is an interview format. I'm bringing in voices beyond my own. Coaches, clinicians, survivors, researchers, people who are living and working in this territory every day. Not because I've run out of things to say, but because this work is too important to be held by only one voice. Before I go further, a brief note. This podcast is not therapy. It is not medical advice. It is not psychological treatment. I am not your therapist. This season discusses inherited trauma, relationship patterns, and the emotional impact of childhood wounds on adult relationships. Please listen at your own pace. In the U.S., you can call or text 988 to reach the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. Free, confidential, and available 24 hours a day. If you are outside the U.S., international crisis resources are available at findahelpline.com. You do not have to navigate this alone. I want to tell you something that took me a long time to understand. I did a significant amount of work on myself before I really understood how much of that work had to happen inside my relationships. I could sit with my own story, I could name my patterns, I could regulate my nervous system most of the time. And then someone I love would do something ordinary, a tone of voice, a silence that went too long, a door closing in a way that felt like a statement, and I was somewhere else entirely. Here is what conflict used to look like for me. When someone said something I disagreed with, or did something that hurt me, or even made a decision that I didn't agree with, I said nothing. Not because I didn't have an opinion, but because expressing it felt more dangerous than swallowing it. it was easier in the body in the moment to go along, to take their side, to manage the temperature of the room by making myself agree with whatever was in it. I actually felt fine doing that. That's the part that took me the longest to understand. The uncomfortable thing, the thing that would have really cost me something, would have been to say, I don't agree with that, or that hurt me, or even, I'm upset and I need you to know it. That felt impossible. So instead, I kept the peace, and the peace kept me quiet, and the quiet collected things. Until something happened, something that had nothing to do with what had actually been building, and everything came out at once. Words I hadn't planned to say, things from months or years before, arriving fully formed as if I had been saving them. I could be really cruel too. Precise in a way that had nothing to do with the moment and everything to do with everything before it. And then I would leave. Not because I wanted to abandon anyone, but because I was too flooded to stay. I needed to get out of the room until my nervous system came back down. And when I came back, I would act like nothing had happened. Sometimes I would even be warm, affectionate, loving in the way you are when you're relieved the storm has passed and you don't know how to talk about what caused it. I would time my return for when I knew the other person was asleep or gone. And then I would just restart as if the conversation had never happened. What I didn't do was repair. Not because I didn't want to, but because I had never been shown how. I would go and beat myself up privately, run through everything in my own mind, replay the conversation over and over again, think of things I should have said, feeling exhausted by the weight of it. But I wouldn't go back and say, what happened in there was not okay. I'm sorry for the cruelty, and I need to tell you what was underneath it. That sentence did not exist for me yet. The shame, the real shame, didn't come from the explosions in my adult relationships. It came from my children. There were times when I got so angry that I would yell and scream at them, and I would see fear in their faces. That broke me. Not the yelling, what I saw after it. Because I knew that face. I had worn it myself. And in that moment, I understood something I hadn't been able to put into words before. I was passing something down. Something I had sworn I would never pass down. And I didn't know how to stop. And that is why I do this work today. Let me tell you what was actually happening in those moments, because I now know what I didn't know then, and I want you to know it too. What I was living inside is called a fawn to flood cycle. Most people have heard of fight or flight. Some people have even heard of freeze. Fewer people have heard of fawn. But fawn is a trauma response. It sits right alongside the others, and it looks like this. When conflict or perceived threat appears, instead of fighting or running, you appease, you manage, you agree when you don't agree. You take their side to lower the temperature. You make yourself smaller so the other person doesn't escalate. It doesn't feel like a trauma response in the moment. It feels like keeping the peace. It feels easier than the alternative. It feels in the body like relief. That is exactly how it's supposed to feel. Because it was built in an environment where making yourself small was the safest available option. where managing someone else's mood was genuinely protective, where conflict had real consequences. The nervous system learned, appease first, survive better. The problem is that the nervous system doesn't know that you're no longer in that house. It is still running the same program. In your adult relationships, with people who are not your parents, in situations that are not actually dangerous. So you fawn, and you suppress, and the resentment builds quietly, because you are a person with opinions and feelings and needs that are not being expressed. They're just being filed away until the filing cabinet is full. And then it floods. Flooding is what happens when the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for perspective and judgment and choosing your words, for being the person you actually want to be, goes offline. The survival brain takes over, and everything that has been suppressed comes out without a filter. The cruelty you didn't plan, the things from years ago that arrived fully formed, the explosion that felt bigger than you. It was bigger than you. It was everything you hadn't said for months or years, all at once. And the leaving, that's not abandonment. That is a nervous system in flight, doing the only regulation it knows, physically removing itself from the overwhelming environment until the system comes back down. And the pretending nothing happened when you came back, that is what happens when nobody ever showed you what repair looks like. You came back, you restarted. That was the only repair you had available. I want to be very clear about something. None of that makes the cruelty okay. Understanding why something happens is not the same as excusing it. But you cannot interrupt a pattern you don't understand. And you cannot change what your nervous system does if you believe the problem is a character flaw. It is not a character flaw. It is a nervous system doing exactly what it learned. And nervous systems can learn something different. Here's the part that still gets me. I was a forensic nurse. I understood fight or flight. I had sat with survivors in emergency rooms in the minutes and hours after violence. I had documented what trauma does to a body. I had testified about it. I understood clinically what happens to a nervous system under threat. And it never occurred to me that the same thing was happening inside my own relationships. I was applying that knowledge to my patients, but not to myself. Because in my clinical training, fight or flight was framed around acute physical threat, a person who had just been assaulted, a body in crisis. Nobody told me that the nervous system doesn't distinguish between physical danger and emotional danger, that a raised voice can activate the same pathway as a physical threat, that withdrawal, silence, and unpredictability, the things that were present in my childhood, had trained my nervous system to respond in the same way a body responds to being in danger. It took years of therapy. It took reading that I did on my own. It took sitting with things I didn't want to look at long enough to finally see them clearly. And even then, understanding it didn't automatically change what I did. That is the piece I want to talk about this season, because I think a lot of people are living in the space between understanding and change. They know their patterns. They know where they come from. They've done the work, the reading, the therapy, the conversations with themselves at 2 a.m. And yet they still find themselves in the same places, with the same people, doing the same things. And they believe that means that they're failing, but they are not failing. Understanding is stage 1. What happens in the body, in the nervous system, when someone you love does something that triggers that old program, that is stage 2. And most of us were never taught stage 2. The interruption model, the framework that I built my work around, starts with notice and name. But the third step is regulate. Regulate has to come before choice, not after. You cannot choose differently while your prefrontal cortex is offline. The work is getting back online fast enough to make a different choice. That is what interrupting looks like. It's not a breakthrough. It's not a transformation. It's a pause, a breath, a moment where the nervous system comes back online just enough to choose something different. That is what this season is about. And the guests I am bringing into these conversations are people who are in that practice, not people who have completed it, people who are doing it in their own relationships, with their own children, with their own histories, and who have something real to offer because of it. Not credentials alone, not lived experience alone, both. Because that is the only combination that has ever actually helped me. Before we close today, I want to bring you back into your body for a moment. If you are driving, keep your eyes open. Otherwise, let them close if that feels comfortable. Notice where you are, the surface beneath you, the weight of your body being held. Take one slow breath in and let it out. Let the exhale be a little longer than the inhale. I want you to think about one relationship in your life, not the easiest one, the one that brings up the most. Hold it gently, not to fix it right now, not to understand it right now, just to notice that it matters to you. And know this, the fact that it brings up something in you is not evidence that something is wrong with you. It is evidence that something is there, something worth understanding, something that can change. Take one more breath, and when you are ready, come back. My first guests of Season 2 are people I have been genuinely eager to bring into this conversation. Lavinia Brown is a trauma-informed psychodynamic coach who works with mothers to help them become the conscious parents and connected partners they want to be through healing their inner child. She is joined by her partner, Andrew Lynn, also a trauma-informed coach. Together, they host the podcast Becoming Untriggered, a show in the top 5% globally. They are a real couple doing this work, professionally and personally, with 3 children watching. That conversation is coming. Make sure you are subscribed so you don't miss it. My book, The Fan in the Window, How We Inherit Trauma and How We Interrupt It, is available now on Amazon. Find it at amazon.com/author/Tressa L. Bell. A companion book is also in the works, the practical guide to everything we have been building together. Stay connected at thefaninthewindow.com for updates. If this episode resonated, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts. It takes less than 2 minutes, and it helps new listeners find this work. And if you listen on Spotify, a rating there helps too. Follow the show wherever you listen. And thank you for being here. This is The Fan in the Window, interrupting what we inherit. This didn't start with you, but you can interrupt it.